I think the most valuable thing that I could give them is find the easiest thing that you can say no to that you normally say yes to when no one's looking, and do that and start. And then, because it's consistency compounds, so I would take the easy, and I say the easiest thing because if you try the hardest thing, you're just going to continue to keep failing, and you're going to you're going to stay in your same addictions. You're going to continue to keep doing the things that you say yes to right now that you should say no, and just find the easiest thing to say that, and then you're going to build confidence in your ability to take action. And what that's going to do is then go for the next bigger thing, right? And then start building habits to saying, being true when no one else is looking, like, hiding no secrets. So that's another big thing.
Welcome to the podcast. Nathan Newberry, your host here. I got Steve Hayes here on the line. He's going to be talking about his story today. Super pumped to dive into it. But right before we dive into it, Steve, can you give us a description, a definition in your words of what you think high performance, and what does that mean to you?
I would definitely say high performance is focused, not scattered. So in my opinion, high performance isn't like I'm doing 100 things 100 miles an hour. It's I'm doing this one thing 100 miles an hour because it's inch wide, narrow, mile deep. Mm-hmm. The power of the sun, can melt through laser, but it'll only give you sunburn in a general speaking, right? So in my opinion, high performance is micro focus and macro results.
Amazing. And so tell us a little bit about your success. Like, I want to dive into more about things. What do you have going on right now, and what are you known for in your success? Let's dive into that.
I would say success is relative to the listener, right? Like, to a person who lives an average life and has the typical 9 to 5, like, success, I could look mega rich, but if I compare myself to some of my, coaches and mentors, then I'm like, I'm barely getting started, so success to me is relative. I think life's good, but I know what I'm capable of and where I'm going. So, mm-hmm. If you ask me if I'm successful, I'm like, well, I succeeded today, so yeah. That's kind of my
but tell
definition.
The audience a little bit about, like, you're building a real estate home development, like you're building an empire here. Tell us a little bit about that and what you do.
Yeah. So I think what's really important, and especially in real estate development and just being in like home service and the contracting field, is focus again. And so what we're doing is we're building a personal portfolio. We used to build for other people, and we just kind of changed our focus to niche down and focus more on home service and growing, just being the best at one thing rather than mm-hmm. the best at trying to be the best at everything, right? So is that so
yeah, man, I just wanted to kind of give you a stage to ring the bell about like what you do and what you're about. So that's awesome, man. But like, let's dive into like your origin story here. Like, tell us like the roots of like where you were inspired at the very beginning, from realizing you were cut from a different cloth. You're a different personality than most. You're driven. You're successful. Like, where did this all start? Was this at what age, and where way back when? Like, bring us to those moments there.
Yeah, I definitely got my work ethic from my dad, because he was just like, I just personally watched him just jump in and get the job done. And, I've always looked at things, taken things apart, and just really as soon as I could take something apart and I know something's possible, like it unwraps all possibility. And so, I think the best attribute that I carry is the ability to kind of figure out what's not working and fix that. And then see how you scale it, And so, mm-hmm. We at a young age, I started in construction. I actually did the work, and it wasn't really like something that I aspired to be. Like, I didn't aspire to be a leader or to grow in that type of, I just showed up and I just did the best I could, and I wanted to learn. So I'd always ask questions. And I'd always try to observe, like, why someone would fail around me, or why mm-hmm. they made the critical decisions that they made. And so it was just something that I was always ticking in my head, and, it just kept getting me promoted. So I worked my way up in corporate and ran some really big monumental jobs in St. Louis, Missouri. central states, and
Mm-hmm.
that kind of paved the way to. I was just so driven that even though I'd be working 60 hours a week, I would work after work and I'd go reconstruct homes. Some people call it flipping. And, so I was flipping homes outside of working 60, 70 hours a week there, but still performing at 110% there, where I kept getting promoted there. And, so it just kind of spiraled into, what can I figure out next? And it never, like, some people have this like dream of like, it was my dad, or it was this, or it's my kids. And it's like, for me, it's like, okay, what can I figure out next, and how far can I take figuring out the next thing? Because every time
Mm-hmm.
I see that something's possible, like like a person, I humanize like an iconic like feeling to associate with somebody. Like if somebody's doing $200 million a year, like, okay, let me go shake hands with that guy, make sure that he's a human, and if he can do it, like, okay, what is he doing? What are the qualities he carries that I can put on myself to get to that scale, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, that's my path right now is like, just diving into history and all these things and figuring out what made them tick. And so, there's nothing really crazy. I literally started my own business just because I sold a car and I wanted to buy a Viper. So,
Yeah.
like, it's not like this, cool, like, tear jerking story, with whatever. And it really just came into my wife said, well, you don't have enough money to go buy a Viper. And I'm like, well, I'll just start selling real estate.
There you go.
And that led into doing this and just multiple different things, figuring out what didn't work and moving past that. It's the failures that made success.
What were some of those failures? Because I mean, building businesses isn't easy, and many of the times we have, transitions or pivots, or sometimes even failures that we had to go through to learn some good lessons to help us move forward.
Yeah, good question. I think building businesses is easy. You know what? Like saying no to businesses is the hard thing for me
Sure.
because like starting something and letting it drain you, and as long as you have cash flow, like you can have an illusion of thinking that it's fine, right? And so for me, it's really been like figuring out what I didn't want to do and what I did, what the people who are focusing, niching on that should be doing, and then recentering focus on like, okay, what's going to get us to the actual 10-year goal, right? Like what's going to get me to like those numbers that I want to hit. And then just zeroing in on that and then figuring out what's like the biggest thing I can tackle that's going to make the most amount of impact. So like all the other little things seem irrelevant to hitting that goal. So the biggest thing I think for starting businesses is like dissolving them. And we just recently dissolved one more division in order for us to start another one, which I know sounds contradictory, but like it's part of marketing and everything that supports the main thing.
Yeah. Did you have that guidance from your dad, or was this also like books and talking with people or masterminds? What kind of helped you learn this and process through all of what you're doing?
So my dad, one famous saying he always had was, I never could see the big picture. And I would look at blueprints, and I ran like very complex underground jobs, and like the museum expansion project for the St. Louis Arch. Like we dig underneath the arch and expanded that.
Wow.
There's not one level floor. There's not one square wall. It's a very complex job. I could always see the big picture. And so like one thing I took from my dad is like he couldn't see the big picture, so I always looked at the end first to be able to see where I'm going, and then be able to construct whatever it is, not just building, but also business. So I carry that same outlook on like having a blueprint and then figuring out what's wrong with the blueprint, because there's always something wrong with the blueprint, even in business, because
Mm-hmm.
what your blueprint is and the perfect blueprint are two totally different things. And then you got to like merge those two together, find out where that marriage happens, and then fix that from that point forward.
I mean, oftentimes that's a gift to have. I mean, like your dad, it was hard for him to see some of that stuff, and I even relate it to like real estate. The reason why people have staging companies is because people can't see the vision of where their furniture would fit in a home like that. But you have that instinct, that gift to kind of see through those blueprints and life and business structures and strategies. What did you end up having to hone that in, or was that something you see just naturally from being in it a lot?
I think the hardest thing is for you to get other people to see what you see. And
Mm.
so to answer your question is like to me it's not necessarily a gift. It's like how do I present that at scale to better serve either my community or the people around me? And so for me it's not so much like I can if I can see the end, like more or less like how do I serve people like my dad who couldn't see the big picture so that I can better serve him and give him a clear picture. So like, we do design build and it's like, listen, we got to give people renderings and then you have to also there's a whole process to, going over and beyond providing so much value so that they're at the end of the day they feel like they've been overserved, right? Because no
Mm.
one's ever going to complain that they got overserved. So,
Right.
to me, I think it's the gift is being able to not just see it yourself and be a visionary, but to get other people to see the vision.
Yeah. I mean, that's sales too, in a lot of ways.
It is.
Did you do any sales in your endeavors of everything, or did you have, what Robert Kawasaki does with his rich dad telling him that's the number one skill he needs to learn?
Yeah.
What was the process of learning those sort of things to convince people to see that vision of yours?
Man, I think everybody's got it, especially when you're a serial entrepreneur, which I think works for some people. I think it doesn't work for most. I would consider myself one that before just because I had so many different divisions. You had to wear that sales hat anyways. And so like those skills get sharpened, but it's a wooden sword because you're too versed, right?
Mm.
Like you don't perfectly have all the objections and the you know uh, obstacles figured out for that niche thing that you're selling. And when you get that zeroed in, that's when you become a really good salesperson. But everyone has to be a salesperson. You got to sell yourself every single day.
Yeah. Sell your kids and eating broccoli, having a
Everything,
wife,
brushing your teeth.
go out on a date, picking choosing what restaurant to be. I mean, there's elements of that for sure,
Hmm.
and everything. Now you're a guy that has a family that is obviously into fitness here. Like, how does that play into your success that you have right now?
A lot of people use their kids as an excuse to not do something. And for me, like my kids climb all over me. We wrestle around. When I'm with them, I'm actually with them. I think people make up false realities to why they haven't done what they think that they could do because they haven't done it and they're not going to do it.
Mm.
And so it's just creating an illusion for everyone around them. So for me personally, I think discipline is first and foremost. I'm a better person by holding true to my word even whenever no one else is looking.
Mm.
So putting in the extra reps, getting up at 4:30 to get to the gym, getting to the office early so that I can be in my right head of space and be creative whenever I'm not being, interrupted. And I have a good system where like, my EA, she filters most of that communication where I'm not bothered, but it allows me to have conversations with myself, which is another discipline. I think people who deal with like depression and stuff, it's not the conversation that they don't have with somebody else. It's actually the conversations they're not having with themselves.
Very
And
true.
so for me, it's like, can I ask myself, because, in the quantum, the fourth realm, not to get like mystical or anything, but you got length, width, height, and, and then time as your fourth dimension. For me, it's like, I try to talk to my future self because my future self already figured out the problems. So literally on whiteboards in my office, I just write out like I ask myself questions and then I answer it. Future self, all right, my future self asks the question and my current self has to answer it in the best way that it can, because there's no difference between tomorrow you're going to wake up and you're going to be somebody else. Well, are you a different person?
Unless you're growing.
I mean,
Never
you're
know.
not you're I can think about a week ago who I was outside of myself. I'm a different person, right?
Right.
So if that's a reality, then the future is no different,
Mm-hmm.
except your experience. So it's the experience is the only part that separates our, what we define as success. Because I know you personally, you got somewhere you want to go, right? Like there's a goal you're
Sure.
trying to achieve, but there's a real you that exists in the future that has already achieved that goal. So if you could talk to that person now, which you can, you close your eyes and you talk to that person, right? Hey, future Nathan, like, how did I overcome this problem? What did I not know then? And then start having those conversations. Most of the world would be surprised with what you're actually capable of. How many times have you said, like, hey, I give the best advice to other people, just not myself?
Sure. Yeah.
What's the difference?
Yeah. And I
You can
know
give
there's a
yourself
lot of
that advice.
successful people. Like I remember hearing that Warren Buffett, he has a time on his calendar he places every day, and it's called thinking out the window time, right? Where it's just like a lot of times people are moving and busy that they never even have time to even, let alone ask prompting questions like that, or let alone think about, their future or their present, or reflect on their past to move forward with helpful new things that they can learn and adjust. But that's that's a lot of wisdom right there that you had to think and process. And being a busy entrepreneur with a wife and kids, where were some of those studies, and where did that beginning all start when you had to realize these things?
Man, I think every day I know I learn a new me.
Mm-hmm.
And so like, as far as like where the wife and kids fit in with that, to answer your question, they're like they're like your smiling support, your cheerleaders, Because like I find most people think that, well, I want to do these things for my kids, and it's like, do you think your kids don't like you any more right now? It's like, no, those kids love you. Like I look back at times with my dad, and there was times when we had to move around a lot because there's a lot. My dad was a carpenter, and my mom didn't work, and we there was times when we'd live in places that most people would deem not livable. Like we did, just places where like the house connected to it would be burnt down, and it was literally like a boarded up house, and we lived in that house, and we lived in my grandparents' farmhouse basement for a while, for like 6 months, with sheets for walls.
Mm.
And so like, at not one time at that point did I look at my dad and think, what a bad person, or why aren't you making my life better? I didn't look. I mean, that maybe that's just me.
Right.
Like some people blame their parents for those things. It's like I thank them for those experiences. Like I got to experience those things, and they made me I know what fortitude is. You drop me out in the middle of the ocean, and I'm scared to death that a shark's gonna eat me. I'm gonna swim to the shore, and it doesn't matter. You're not gonna kill me. Like that's fortitude, and
Mm.
it takes hard times to get there, and I'm thankful for those hard times. So, my wife and kids are, their smiles light me up. They definitely bring me joy, but like they don't connect me with my future me. Like it's
Yeah.
impossible.
And you're an obsessive learner like I am. You're always in masterminds or different coaching programs, or you're obsessively reading. I saw a video, and we chatted about this, where you were on the treadmill and reading a book. Like
Hmm.
I do that same thing. I've never seen anybody else do that, just because I'm an obsessive learner, trying to fit any extra possible time into doing something where my mind's not working, but my body is. Like, how does that play into the success you have right now? What kind of things did you have to learn, or what you're working on?
I've heard a lot of people say, I've never read a book, but they're successful, and I don't see that to be true. Like I don't think that. I think some way or another they've consumed a book, they've learned something. I think there's too much available out there that's going to help you become like your best you by knowing like going through a tough business time. Like most people in big business, like Phil Knight and Elon
From
Musk,
Nike, yeah.
yeah, all these guys, like everyone who's built an empire has went through times where they would be embarrassed to talk about it, and it's the story of endurance that really defined like the characteristic of that company.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't think they would have gotten as far as they did if they didn't go through those hard times. So for me, like reading books and especially like bringing to life what you think is not real is like one of the most valuable things that we could ever hold on to. And I cherish my books. Like they are my trophies. And
Mm-hmm.
I've read a lot. I read a lot. Um, I think I know there's people who speed read. I personally like I enjoy that book. Like I'm in it. Like I just finished Einstein, his biography by Walter Isaacson, and it's just amazing inside look at like history and like what's possible. You know.
Yeah. What are the things that you tell yourself when you don't feel like getting up in the day to go to the gym, to read a book, to show up positively to for your wife or kids? Like, what do you tell yourself? Because there's those internal voices that we all say of just like, hey, just snooze, let's chill, let's take a day off. Like, what do you tell yourself when those moments come up?
Yeah, those. That's a really good question. You know, the person I know things are caught, not taught. You know, so like I know I've heard this somewhere, but when and I've literally used this quite a few times, even recently, but I always default to action. So like when I'm thinking about like if it's a Sunday and I'm like I just want to lounge out for a minute and take a nap or whatever, I'm like you know what, default to action, and I'll go write some goals down, and then
Mm.
like writing down goals for me has been major lately. I just started actually like because I've actually well, a funny story. I wrote down a goal because we own some land on a golf course and we were going to build our just a house out there, a nice one. It's a couple $1 million house neighborhood, right? So we're going to build our house there, and the beginning of that year, I wrote down like, hey, I'm it's Christmas time, and I'm in our new house, and and I just wrote the feeling of having accomplished the goal. And at the time, I was building some a couple $1 million houses in a neighborhood closer to the office, more ideal location. And I kept saying, I'm like, maybe after I sell this first house, then I'll buy the second house, maybe, but I'm still going to build my house out there. Well, it just worked out, and I ended up like buying the house from the company and moving in there, and I spent that next Christmas in there. So I have like awesome experiences with actually writing down goals and then seeing them come, even though I didn't really
Yeah.
plan it. I didn't blueprint that. Like there's no way I could have planned that. And that Christmas, man, I really cherished it because it's like, I didn't even know this was possible. It really wasn't possible. But when you like let go of the goal, so for me, I'm at like 95 goals is what I've written down so far, and I'm
Amazing.
just gonna keep on going and never stop.
So you document all the goals.
Yep,
Do you
yep.
do that in an actual physical journal, or is it a document, or is it a whiteboard? How do you document
So
those
this is
goals?
where I'm gonna sound weird. Um, I I'm not like an elemental person, I'm not like a tree hugger or anything like that. But to me, paper comes from trees, right? And I believe there's power in the system, right? And so I believe in writing on paper. I believe like lead from a pencil is stone, right? So it's again it's earth. So I believe there's power in writing things down and not just putting it in like a cloud, like a Excel sheet or something. And so personally, like I just have more of a connection to like feeling like I have the world helping me accomplish these goals where I can kind of set it and forget it, right?
Mm.
And so I'm in a different coaching group with Ed Milet and Andy Frisella, and and I got one of their books with a gold leaf on the front, and that's where I keep my goals. So I write them all down, I number them, I write the time, the date that I've written it, because I want that documentation of, hey, I wrote this thing, and it only took this long, or it took this long to manifest that. And I believe firmly that it's only your belief and knowing that you can accomplish that goal is the only thing that's stopping you from achieving that goal.
100%. What are some tips that you've learned around habit building, around goal achieving, around being disciplined? What are some principles of things that you've learned that has shaped your life and your success?
I'm I'm a firm believer that you don't decide your future, you decide your habits, and your habits decide your future.
Mm.
So for me, habits have to align with like my micro focus on accomplishing the goals that I'm after, right? So like If I have a habit, it has to somehow support, like even going to the gym, I'm reading while I'm exercising for a part of
Mm-hmm.
it, right? Because like if my body's doing something, my mind can, it doesn't need to wander. I can focus,
Yep.
you know, because like if you're physically walking somewhere, you got to watch where you're going. But if you're on an elliptical, you just need to, all you gotta do is just know the repetition. So my body's doing something physical, I'm breaking a sweat, and I'm reading something, and I'm feeding my mind. So
Mm-hmm.
for me, habits need to align with a goal, and it needs to support it in one way or another. Because if you don't do that one thing and fix that one thing, then you'll, again, it's the silver bullet versus the golden BBs.
Yeah. Do you take time each year to kind of get away and do that with you and your wife, or how do you constantly goal set and build that routine for yourself?
So for me, it's a funny thing that people would wait till the first of the year to set a goal. We don't, we have before, and it didn't change anything. So to me, that tells me that that's the definition of insanity, kind of doing the same thing,
Right.
expecting a different result. So to me, it has nothing to do with getting away. It's like I can get away and by closing my eyes and really focusing on the feel of the breeze on the ocean and hearing the ocean, you know, waves. Like I can go there in my mind. Like, so do I physically need to go there to experience it? I mean, sure, it's enjoyable, but like, so no, I don't need to go anywhere to do it, and I don't. I just make it an effort to review my goals, you know, at least once a week, like read all the way through them, and daily I'm adding another element to my goals.
Elements in certain steps of like accomplishment of that, or check marks,
I don't even
or
think
just revisions
that's a
as it
really good
goes.
question. A really good question. I don't believe in revising your goals. I think you should know who you were when you wrote it and then reflect after you've accomplished it. Because you're a different person the day that you have achieved that goal, and I think you have more of appreciation of what's possible if you actually notice who you were then and know who you are now.
Right. How much of the intentionality do you plan with your life, and then around how you do it with your wife and your kids? Because sometimes it's like helping them see that vision, helping them anchor in and being intentional, and help them thinking and process and doing that. How much of that intentionality do you do that with defining your life and your future of your kids and all?
Really good question. Whenever I do a daily, I journal daily, and so I write about the last day. I like to write in the morning because that's when I'm most creative. I do an audit every day on how were my experiences the day before. You know, like one day I only had my youngest son with me. He's 5 now, and I remember like having a really enjoyable experience with him, but I couldn't remember his face.
Mm.
And and I was disappointed with myself at the end of the night, when I was laying in bed, and I was just thinking to myself, I'm like, it's wrong that he was such a supporter and just following me around and being so cute, and I don't remember his face. And so the next day and from there on, while I'm experiencing like times with my kids, like my phone's on quiet. I have notifications off for text. I don't need to be bugged. Like I'll check those twice a day. And then, if someone needs me to contact my EA, there, people know that. And when I'm with them, like I'm actually with them. And then I purposely like slow the clock down. So like when I'm spending time with my wife, like a lot of times there's a lot of things I want to say, but I slow the clock down and I'm like, okay, let's listen, you know, and you just get far more effective experience if you just slow down time and actually like soak in what you're supposed to be experiencing.
What would you tell people that are stuck in either procrastination, that don't have disciplines, or they're trying to figure those out, or they're beginning stages of entrepreneurship and they're just like trying to define more clarity with things, or if someone's just like bogged down in their business and life that doesn't have these defined intentionalities and stuff? How would you help people with those challenges?
I think the most valuable thing that I could give them is find the easiest thing that you can say no to that you normally say yes to when no one's looking, and do that and start, and then because it consistency compounds. So I would take the easy, and I say the easiest thing because if you try the hardest thing, you're just going to continue to keep failing, and you're going to fall. You're going to stay in your same addictions. You're going to continue to keep doing the things that you say yes to right now that you should say no, and just find the easiest thing to say that and then you're going to build confidence in your ability to take action. And what that's going to do is then go for the next bigger thing, right? And then start building habits to saying, being true when no one else is looking, like hiding no secrets. So that's another big thing. Man,
Mm-hmm.
this is a good one. So when things started changing for me, and especially in business, is when I stopped being a jerk, and like especially to my wife, because like it was when I was younger, and I don't really talk about this, but when I was younger, like a lot of people, I was very shy, and I didn't, I'm still an introvert. Like I don't want, and so like I never got attention from girls. Girls would be like, "You're really cute," and I'd be like, "No, I'm not." So I always down talk myself. Belief, self belief, right? That's still something I think we all struggle with. Like, who do you believe you to be?
Sure.
And and when you get older, you guys, we age like fine wine, and so um, like you start getting attention. You just you don't your eyes aren't just on one thing. At least for me, I wasn't. And one day we were in Florida, and they I kind of had to make a choice. Like, listen, are you all in with your wife and your kids, or do you want to go live a different life? And you know, I sincerely told myself that I'm all in. I'm like, you know what, this is 100% it, right? And there's other parts of the story, and but I think the most eye-opening thing was I looked at my kids and I looked at who she could be if I looked at her, who she could be, and I made the choice and I went all in. And since then, like everything has changed. Like when you become true and you let go of your secrets and you actually get them all out there, you become a whole different person. And who you're capable of being is really what can you write down on paper? You know, what can you envision yourself to be? Let go of all secrets, truly be free, because they say the truth will set you free. You don't really understand that unless you've held secrets
Sure.
and then actually let them go and get them out there. Because the man in the room with no secrets is the freest man in the world, and you can't stop a free man.
That's right. What about here's a unique question. What do you carry every day? What's an everyday carry that's unique that you bring and carry around you with you all the time?
Well, 45 caliber Springfield Armory
There you
pistol.
go.
Besides
Okay.
that, you know, it's I'm becoming more self aware every day. So like if an anxious feeling comes over me, like I actually like analyze who I am outside of myself, and I'm like, listen, there's no immediate danger in front of you right now. Like you shouldn't be feeling anxiety. And then I get down to, well, I don't know if I'm actually answering the question here. Like the one thing I carry that I'm improving on is my self awareness. Like
Mm-hmm.
know thyself. And so what I carry is like the ability to kind of self analyze quicker and course correct.
Yeah. Is there anything like you have bracelets on? Do you wear necklace? Is there any? I mean, I've heard so many unique ones that people bring or carry. Is there anything in significance that you do for a reason?
Ironically, I don't tie these things to triggers. Um, that's one thing that I'm like, my mind is, I'm an analyzer. I think a lot. Well, I'm a visionary, but like, I'm very analytical, right? And so like, for me, I would, if I actually tied this, like these bracelets, these are just from my daughter. You know what I mean? Like
Mm.
I wear my wedding ring, my real wedding ring on my neck and stuff. And there's like it's set it and forget it. But for me, it's nothing. There's no like immediate triggers around me that are enabling that self awareness. If that if
Sure.
that's in the direction you were going, like
Yeah.
I don't have a direct trigger for that.
But that's a good one, man. How can people follow you and connect with you more, Steve? I mean, you have a great story. You have a lot to share about a lot of great things, and then you're building some amazing facilities around buildings and remodels and all these things that you're doing. Like how people can follow you and connect with you further about your expertise and what you could share with the world.
Yeah, no, I think even though we're kind of reformatting all of our social media stuff, Instagram is probably the easiest way to stay connected. I post more stories there, and Facebook kind of doesn't allow as much,
Sure.
freedom in posting. So Instagram's probably the best one. Just Steve Patrick H on
Okay.
Instagram, and Steve Hayes on Facebook. If that's
Yeah.
that's where they like to hang.
I'll put some links down below for us. But yeah, man. We appreciate you being on the show and giving us some insights of everything. Until next time, we will wrap up it from there. But thanks for being on the show today, man.
Thanks for having me, Nathan.